It doesn't start with a fight. It starts with silence, a silence so heavy it hums. You send a message. She sees it, maybe even smiles, and then nothing. 1 hour becomes three, three become a day, and by then your mind is no longer your own. You replay every word, every glance, every pause in the last conversation. You're not thinking logically anymore. You're chasing a ghost. That's how the quiet game begins. Not as punishment, but as proof. Because for some people, and this goes far beyond gender, distance is the measure of love. If you chase, it means you care. If you suffer, it means she matters. If you break, it means she's worth breaking for. This is called intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful form of conditioning known in behavioral psychology. It's what keeps gamblers hooked, what addicts crave, what lovers confuse for passion. When affection is given and then withheld, the human brain lights up like a slot machine. Dopamine floods the system, not when love is received, but when it's possible. And in that gap between maybe and never, obsession grows. She doesn't have to say a word. The silence itself becomes communication. You start doing the emotional math. What did I do wrong? Should I apologize again? Was I too much? But here's the twist. In many relationships, that silence isn't cruelty. It's strategy. Not conscious, but learned. A way to regain control in a world where control once felt impossible. Imagine a girl who grew up unseen. Whenever she spoke up, she was told to be quiet. Whenever she asked for attention, she was told to wait. Over time, she learned something powerful. If she withdrew, if she stopped trying, people suddenly noticed. Silence became her weapon, her protection, her proof that she mattered. Years later, she carries that weapon into love, not to destroy, but to survive. And the man who loves her feels punished, while she feels safe. He chases to feel loved. She withholds to feel secure, both trapped in a cycle neither fully understands. Silence is not absence, it's control disguised as calm. Love in its purest form is surrender, but surrender terrifies those who've been powerless before, so they build rituals of distance, coldness, and ambiguity, not to hurt, but to not be hurt first. It's a self-defense mechanism dressed up as a test of loyalty. The problem? These tests have no passing grade. The more you prove yourself, the less you're trusted, because deep down, what they fear isn't you leaving. It's you staying long enough to see who they really are. But how does this silent dance turn into an emotional trap, one that rewards pain and punishes stability? To answer that, we have to look inside the machine itself and see how the ego trap works. It looks like love, it feels like passion, but it's not connection, it's control dressed in desire. The trap begins quietly, almost invisibly. A missed call, a delayed reply, a sudden withdrawal after a moment of closeness. You tell yourself she's just busy, then you tell yourself she's testing you, and before you know it, you're performing for attention, performing for forgiveness, performing for the smallest scrap of warmth, and that's the design. Because the ego trap isn't about love at all, it's about emotional leverage, about who feels safe and who doesn't, about who chases and who is chased. The human brain is wired to seek closure, an end to uncertainty, but when someone uses silence, inconsistency, or selective affection, they trigger what psychologists call reactance, the impulse to regain freedom when we feel it's being taken away. She pulls away. You chase harder. You chase harder. She feels valuable again. She feels valuable. She rewards you with affection. You feel relief. Dopamine surges. And there it is, intermittent reinforcement. The same pattern that keeps gamblers at the table and addicts hooked on the next high. In love, it doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like chemistry. You tell yourself, I can fix this, I can win her back. But what you're really doing is trying to calm a biochemical storm inside your nervous system. Picture a woman staring into her mirror after an argument, chest tight, heart racing, not from anger but from fear. Fear that she's losing control, fear that her worth is slipping away. So she does what she's learned works best. She withdraws. She doesn't respond to the text. She lets the silence grow until it fills the room. Meanwhile, on the other end of that silence, a man paces, checking his phone every few minutes, rereading messages, convincing himself that if he just says the right thing, she'll come back. Both are trapped in the same storm. Both are addicted to the rhythm of power and surrender. This isn't just about her ego, it's about the ego itself, the fragile part of the psyche that whispers, if I'm not desired, I don't exist. So it creates conditions where love must be earned through pain, where losing becomes the currency of validation, where one person's suffering becomes another's sense of importance. But ego-driven love can't sustain itself because it feeds on tension, not trust. And the moment peace arrives, the ego starves. The ego doesn't crave love. It craves superiority and calls it affection. To understand how this machinery was built and why so many fall into it, we have to go backward into the childhood stories, the cultural conditioning, and the invisible lessons that teach us to use love as leverage. That's where the origins of the ego trap begin. No one is born knowing how to manipulate love. We learn it from silence, from pain, from stories that told us affection must be earned. Before this pattern becomes a game, it begins as a wound. A child sits in her room waiting. She's been told to behave, to be quiet, to not make a scene. So she learns that love doesn't come when she asks for it. It comes when she deserves it. That lesson stays, it hardens, it mutates, because if you grow up believing attention is a prize, you'll spend adulthood creating tests just to feel worthy of winning. According to attachment theory, the way we love as adults mirrors the way we were loved as children. The anxious one fears abandonment and clings tighter. The avoidant one fears engulfment and pulls away. The disorganized one swings between both. Love me, don't touch me, stay close, go away. Many of the ego traps we see in adult relationships aren't evil. They're echoes. Echoes of an early world where vulnerability was dangerous and affection was unpredictable. The ego becomes a shield, a story we tell ourselves to survive emotional chaos. I don't need you. I'll wait until you come to me. I'll win by being colder than you. These are not strategies of love. They're strategies of control disguised as strength. She remembers watching her parents argue in silence. No shouting, no tears, just distance. Her mother would retreat into another room. Her father would wait, pacing, apologizing for things he didn't even understand. And one day, she realized, the quiet one always wins. Not because she's right, but because she makes the other one chase. Years later, she doesn't even notice she's doing the same thing. Silence feels familiar. Power feels safe. And the one who loves her most ends up feeling small, confused, desperate for scraps of peace. Culture reinforces this pattern. Movies romanticize it. We're told love should be dramatic, uncertain, passionate, that the chase is proof of desire. But what if the chase is just trauma disguised as romance? What if unpredictability isn't excitement, it's anxiety? And what if the very things that make us feel alive are the same things that keep us trapped? Because deep down, we don't crave the person who plays with our emotions. We crave the emotional roller coaster itself, the chaos we mistake for chemistry. We repeat what hurt us until it finally looks like love. Now that we know where it begins, let's look at how it manifests. The moment when love turns cold, distance becomes punishment, and silence becomes the ultimate weapon. The test, distance, coldness, and the silent punishment. Every relationship has a breaking point. But in this one, the break doesn't come from shouting, it comes from silence. It begins small. A tone shift, a message left on read, a look that lasts 1 second too long, and then nothing. The air changes. She's not angry. Not exactly. Just gone. And that's what makes it so unbearable. You can fight anger. You can reason with frustration. But how do you argue with absence? That's the test, the silent punishment, a psychological freeze meant to measure how much you care, how much you'll chase, how much of yourself you're willing to lose to restore peace. Psychology. This is a mixture of reactance and intermittent reinforcement. Reactance is your brain's way of rebelling when freedom is taken. Intermittent reinforcement keeps you hooked because the reward, her affection, comes unpredictably. You never know when the silence will end, and that uncertainty drives obsession. Your mind turns her distance into a puzzle you must solve. You start overcompensating, sending longer messages, promising more, apologizing for things that aren't clear. But here's the cruel paradox. The more you chase, the less you're respected. The more you explain, the less you're understood, because in her eyes, the chase isn't communication, it's confirmation. It proves she matters. It proves she has power. And for a moment, her ego feels alive again. He texts, "I just want to fix this." She stares at the screen. Her thumb hovers. Then she locks the phone. The silence isn't random. It's designed. She needs to feel that surge of importance, that quiet validation of being missed. She tells herself it's not manipulation, it's balance. But what she doesn't realize is that every unanswered message chips away at something sacred, trust, because the one who loves her begins to learn the wrong lesson, that love equals fear, that comfort is temporary, that being close is dangerous. There's a strange power in withdrawal. To step back and watch someone crumble under your absence, it feels godlike. But it's a lonely kind of divinity. This is the illusion of control the ego craves. The illusion that says, if I can make you hurt, I can't be hurt myself. But love isn't a contest of control. It's an act of surrender. And surrender terrifies the ego, because surrender means exposure. Absence isn't strength, it's fear wearing a crown. But what if the silence isn't just strategy? What if it's a mirror, a reflection of the wounds hiding behind the mask of power? To see what's really happening, we have to look deeper into the shadows, into the mirror of projection and fear. Every punishment reveals a pain. Every silence hides a scream. We often think the person who controls emotions has the power. But the truth is darker. The one who controls is usually the one most afraid. Afraid of being rejected, afraid of being forgotten, afraid that if love isn't earned through struggle, it isn't real. The silence, the coldness, the distance, they're not just weapons, they're mirrors. And what they reflect is fear. Psychologists call this projection. The act of placing our own rejected emotions onto someone else. It's not malicious, it's unconscious. A way of saying, you make me feel this way, instead of facing the truth. I already feel this way inside. So the woman who fears abandonment punishes with distance. The man who fears inadequacy controls with dominance. The anxious one blames the avoidant, and the avoidant blames the anxious, each seeing their reflection in the other's flaws. When she pulls away, she's not proving strength. She's reenacting the moment she first felt powerless. When she withholds affection, she's recreating the environment where love was conditional. Because in the quiet, she's not really testing you, she's testing the past. She sits alone after an argument, phone on silent, tears she'll never admit to falling. Her chest aches, not from what he said, but from what it reminded her of. That childhood version of herself who waited by the door for someone to come back. Now, she plays the other role, the one who leaves first. Because if she leaves, she can't be left. She tells herself it's control, but it's really fear in disguise. The human ego builds walls from the bricks of old memories, and every time love tries to climb in, the ego demands a toll, pain, proof, performance. But love doesn't grow in defense. It grows in exposure. The moment we drop the mask, the performance ends, and something raw, something real can finally breathe. The irony is that both people in this dance, the tester and the one being tested, share the same wound. Both are terrified of being unseen. One hides through silence, the other hides through chasing. Both are desperate for the same thing, to be chosen without having to beg for it. Control is never power, it's protection from pain you haven't faced. But what happens when someone finally sees the game and refuses to play? When love stops being about winning and losing and becomes about truth? That's where repair begins. And next, we'll learn how to break the cycle without breaking ourselves. Every pattern can be broken, but only when you stop trying to win and start trying to understand. There comes a point in every toxic cycle where silence loses its power, where the same old punishments feel hollow, where both people realize this isn't love anymore. It's addiction with prettier words. That moment, the crash after the chaos, is where repair begins. But repair isn't about changing the other person, it's about reclaiming yourself. To escape an ego trap, you must stop feeding the ego, yours and theirs. That means stop chasing validation, stop performing for approval, stop believing that love has to be earned through pain. When you refuse to participate in emotional games, something powerful happens. The intermittent reinforcement that once kept you addicted dies. The pattern collapses because it can't exist without your participation. This is where boundaries enter the story, not as walls, but as maps. They tell both people where love can live and where it cannot. And they sound like this. I care about you, but I won't beg for connection. I'm willing to talk, but not to be punished with silence. I'll stay, but only if we both stop testing and start trusting. He stops texting, not out of pride, out of clarity. He finally understands that chasing peace only prolongs the war. Days later, she reaches out, not with anger, but confusion, because the silence she once used as power now echoes back at her as emptiness. When he answers, his voice is calm, no pleading, no edge, just truth. He says, I'm here if you want to talk, but not if we're playing the same game. And in that moment, for the first time, the pattern breaks. Not because he won, but because he stopped needing to. Love can't exist where fear is the currency. It only thrives when both people can be vulnerable, when no one has to lose for the other to feel secure. True connection demands transparency, and transparency means being seen without armor, without tests, without the quiet punishments we once called passion. This is how the ego trap dissolves, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of honest consistency. A text answered, a truth spoken, a boundary honored. Love isn't proof by defeat, it's peace by choice. But even after the repair, one question remains. What happens after the cycle ends, when there's no more drama to chase, no more silence to decode, no more tests to pass? That's where the real challenge begins, learning how to live without the chaos you once called love. When the game ends, the silence returns, but this time it's not punishment, it's peace. The strangest part of healing isn't the pain, it's the quiet that follows it. For so long, your nervous system was trained to need tension. The waiting, the guessing, the highs and lows, it all felt like proof that something real was happening. But now, no more tests, no more chasing, no more walking on emotional glass, and yet part of you feels empty. That's what freedom sounds like at first. It doesn't roar, it whispers. Because when you've lived your whole life in emotional chaos, calm feels like withdrawal. In neuroscience, this is called hedonic adaptation. the tendency to normalize whatever emotional state we live in for long enough. If you grew accustomed to unpredictability, your brain learned to equate anxiety with excitement. Love became a chemical roller coaster. Dopamine for the chase, cortisol for the fear, serotonin for the brief relief. Breaking that cycle means retraining your nervous system to find peace in stability, not chaos. It's the emotional equivalent of learning to breathe after years of running. This is where many people relapse, not into the same person, but into the same pattern. They mistake boredom for loss. They miss the pain because it once made them feel alive. But this is where real transformation happens, when you choose peace, even though your past begs for drama. She's sitting in a cafe scrolling through her phone. No unread messages, no silent treatments, no mind games, just stillness. For a moment she feels that old ache, that urge to provoke, to test, to see if someone will chase her again. Then she exhales, because she realizes something profound. The need to be chased was never about love. It was about fear. And for the first time, she doesn't need to be pursued to feel real. She just is. The ultimate freedom isn't walking away from someone else. It's walking away from the version of yourself that needed chaos to feel loved. It's the quiet confidence that says, I can be soft without being weak. I can love without losing myself. I can be alone without feeling abandoned. This is the new economy of love, where affection isn't traded for proof, and silence isn't a weapon, but a sanctuary. Peace isn't the end of passion, it's the beginning of power. The female ego trap, or any ego trap, isn't really about gender or games. It's about humans trying to protect the most fragile thing we carry, the need to be seen. But when we stop using power to feel safe and start using honesty to feel connected, love transforms from a battlefield into a home. And maybe that's the point. Not to win, not to lose, but to finally stop playing.